Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
My name is Arnab Bhagwati. I am an alumni of IIT Bombay, and during my course of Masters, we worked on a very interesting project, which was introduced by Professor Anil Gupta. He's the founder of Gyan Foundation in Ahmedabad. And this project was introduced to us as an academic project, which we call as P3, which is Project 3, basically, the final thesis of our academic course. And this deals with a very interesting problem which was found in Little Run of Kutch. So it's an area in Gujarat which is around 5 hours journey from Ahmedabad. And it's a Little Run of Kutch, and there is another place called Greater Run of Kutch, which is famous. Both of them are famous for salt cultivation. And the problem that was introduced in that area is all about the salt workers who have a very hard time while cultivating salt. There were many problems that were introduced, and we did a field study to validate them, to triangulate them. And but because there was some time constraint, and there was not much luxury of time, we had to stick to one scope, and the scope that I chose was sanitation. And we will go through now. The part is, out of all those problems, how did we choose sanitation as a problem to look upon, and then solve it further? So this whole journey, we will show you how we slowly narrowed down the scope and came to one particular topic, and then further dug it to explore the various solutions. The objective of this project is to solve the problem of sanitation at Little Run of Kutch for the Agariyas. The Agariyas are people who work in agar, and agar is a term in local language which means salt pan. And salt pan is basically it's a kind of a bed of salt where the salt cultivation happens over a span of 6 to 7 months. So the approach to this study was initially, it was a bias that was introduced to us by one of the member of Gyan Foundation, telling that sanitation is a problem in that area. Now, why do I call it bias? Because it was a personalized opinion about sanitation. And now the responsibility of a designer is to validate that bias. And how do we validate it? We validate it through field studies and look at what the user do. And also sometimes we shadow the process, as in we do the same thing the way the user has done, and then we experience it ourselves, and then we validate. So the first bias was that sanitation is a big problem. So before delving deep into the problem, the first issue or the first challenge that we faced was to find and learn the technology of toilets first of all, and also go to the place first of all and stay with them. So it was a challenge turned opportunity for us to understand their community, understand their pain, their frustrations, and the motivations that they live upon. There were two parallel tracks. One was understand what a toilet actually is, as in what are the elements of toilet. And the elements of toilet are basically the enclosure, the roof, the pan, then the water supply, and the drainage. There are many ways to tackle. There are many ways to design a toilet. by just having different permutation and combination of all these elements. And parallel to this exploration of what toilet is, what are the technology behind toilets, there was the field study which was going on. So these two parallel tracks, they converged, and we studied the ecosystem of the area, because now we were on a field, we had the knowledge of about the toilets. Now with that background and with that knowledge, we started looking at the ecosystem of that surrounding. So slowly and slowly we'll move on. Let's continue the journey now. So as I said, to understand the problem of a user, or in other words, to validate a bias that we generally have as a personalized opinion, it is important that we go to the site, we do observation, we do shadowing, and we do ecosystem study. Now, sanitation is a problem which is not very easy to solve because it is a wicked problem. That means we never know whether it is the root problem or not. Maybe it is a symptom of some bigger problem. So in such case, what we have to do is we just have to go and talk to the users. One thing that we understood during this project is, if you know the user like the back of your hand, like if you know the user so well, giving a solution to the problem of the user becomes very, very easy. And if you see somebody giving an opinion about those users, you will have a very strong point to either strengthen that point or either counter that point. That means what? The bottom line is that if you know the users very well, you can tackle anything for those users, and you can advocate for them more efficiently, ultimately giving us better solutions for them, solutions that are tailor fit to their community. Now, the thing is, when you go to a user, when you ask, do you have a problem in sanitation? What will be the general answer? They might say, yeah, there are some problems, durability mostly. They might say something gets broken, most of those kind of aspects, right? But sometimes, and these are some textbookish answers which perhaps you are not looking at. Your pursuit is to find the root, the transparency. Your pursuit is to have a transparent view of the problems, and not just textbookish, presentable kind of a statement coming from users. For that, this is the foundation of any design research. And Einstein used to say, right, when you have to solve a problem, you have to fall in love with the problem first. 95% you can say, like, you have to learn the problem, and the rest of the percentage which is left is the solution. So here, when we went to that field, this is the foundation. I was realizing that this is the foundation of our entire project that will be having our journey in the coming years. So this was back in 2020. Yeah, and while one of my friend, Chitranshu Verma, he was my batchmate back then. So we both went there. We took help from Gyan Foundation. One person who he escorted us in Ahmedabad, and then took us to this area, Little Run of Kutch, and introduced us to this family, Melabhai. The person's name is Melabhai, and he's not just a single person staying there. He has his whole family, and he has got his hut. So we stayed there, we observed what they do, we did what they do, and we also learned the surrounding of it. As in, who are the helpers? Who are those NGOs working for their benefit? What are those government schemes? Right? The current situation, the status quo of that area. So that was the ecosystem study that we did. Because never know, if you're providing a solution, it is not a solution in isolation. It is a solution in collaboration generally in this kind of spaces. Let's see what the story of Agaria. This is Melabhai. Melabhai stays with his wife, with his 3 sons, 1 daughter, and there is daughter-in-law and a kid. So you can see the dynamics of this whole family. And this is a representational, okay? So that means there are multiple families staying in Little Run of Kutch with the same, family dynamics, family, mix from the different I mean to say family mix as in different age groups. So how did they decide the occupation of salt workers? I mean, why they do not do something else but they cultivate salt? The answer to this question is not very simple. It is actually it's a Tom and Jerry kind of a catch-up game between the brokers, between the companies and the salt workers. It's kind of a vicious cycle where these guys, they cultivate salt and they sell it. Okay, they need some point of contacts to sell it, right? Those point of contacts are none but the brokers, and there are only handful of brokers there who used to have several families under them. That means several families, they cultivate salt, they gather that salt, bring it and sell it to the broker with a very bare minimum price. And that price is, can you guess for 1 kilo how much it will be? It's 20 paisa. 20 paisa for 1 kilo of salt. They sell it to the broker. Now the broker, what he does, he collects that from all these families, and now this amount is in tons. Okay, it's not never kilos, now it's ton. And the trucks, they go to those little run of Kutch, and then they collect that crystal of salts, bring it back to their factories, and they start cleaning that salt. While cleaning process, 20% of salt, it goes waste. 80% remaining are added with iodine, and then further they are being packed. It is said, it's the same salt, it's just the packaging is different. Different companies come and they put their own label, and that's how we sell the salt. And they make how much? Do you know what is the cost, retail price of 1 kilo of salt? Max 20, maximum 20 rupees. Look at the difference, look at the contrast. Now what happens is that sometimes there are some disputes happening between these workers and the brokers. Workers say that we are selling it in a very low price. Why don't you increase the price? Then these brokers are very smart. They say, if you do not sell it to me, go elsewhere. I am happy. I do not need your salt. That means the broker has many options to go. But the salt workers do not have much options because they are illiterate. That is another problem. They're illiterate, they're not street smart. They just know one thing, that is to cultivate salt. They know that art. But other than that, it's very difficult for them to tackle other problems, which is why they fall in this vicious cycle. What they do? Fine, I will work with you. And that's how the establishment of that relationship happens with the broker and the worker. And sometimes what happens is, the money that they get is pretty less for one season. The 20 paisa for 1 kilo. That's pretty less. It's around 30,000 for 8 months, you can say. 30,000 household income. It is not an individual's income. It's a household income, 30,000 rupees for 8 months. That is the total amount, 8 months. After that, they go back because the salt cultivation never happens. For 4 months, it is closed because of the monsoon. And when they come back to, when the monsoon is gone, they come back to the little run of Kutch, and then they start cultivating again for the next season with a new bunch of money, those 30,000. Now what happens is that this 30,000 is never enough. They have to buy diesel, they have to buy generators and all, they have to rent it. And there are many things that goes in expenses, which is why they take loan from whom? The brokers. Because they are the only point of contact who deals with money. Now when they take loans from these brokers, you know the rest of the story. It is a cycle, it's a catch-up game again. How do I fulfill my loan? How do I clarify my loan? So this is where they get trapped and trapped and trapped. And then it becomes a family legacy that my father was a salt worker, I am a salt worker, and my son will also be a salt worker. And this is a tradition that has been going through since ages. The problem here lies with the living condition of the salt workers. You know what is the heat of Ahmedabad. You have been staying there, it's very hot. And during the summers, it ranges to around 50 degrees Celsius sometimes. Imagine the temperature in Little Round of Kutch during this time. And during this harsh climate, they have to work outdoors under the sun. So that becomes a very hostile environment for these people Moving on, this is Melabai's residence. It is made up of twigs, branches, and bamboos in some places, with all these carton boxes and gunny bags used to wrap the entire frame and make it a home. You can see some solar panels which are being provided by government at 80% subsidy. That means 80% is paid by government, the rest of the payment is the salt workers. Number 1, the climatic conditions. The climatic condition here is very harsh. During night it becomes colder, and during daytime it ranges up to 50 to 60 degrees Celsius sometimes, during the summer especially. And the nights are very windy, because of which nothing stays. You have to anchor everything to the ground. Third point is the soil condition. The soil condition is that it is sandy to some extent, but it has become mud, so it's porous. That means it has got air inside, and that's why it's kind of insulated. It doesn't become cold when the night conditions are cold. It doesn't warm up that much during the daytime because it has air inside. It is somewhat kind of if you imagine, I will give an analogy. It is like a cake. Now coming to why this area, why not some other area? We know salt cultivation is happening in the coastal areas where the tidal waves come and then the water is being retained in some area, and then the salt gets deposited and then it is collected. Right? That's what we know, how the salt cultivation is happening. But here it is not sea, it is way far from the coastal regions. Then how does this salt is cultivated here? Back in, I don't know the exact time, but in the history, the geography of this region was submerged in the sea. And with some tectonic plates movement, this became a land gradually. But the water underground, it is salty. It's so much salty that it's equal to 10 tablespoons of salt in 1 glass of water. If you test it, you can feel that salty, right? That is the taste of the water there, underground water. And it is said that total dissolved solids, that means it's called TDS value, which is more than 1200, which is not fit for edible purpose. Now coming to those 4 months when they do not work there is the monsoon season. And during this season, this whole area becomes like a sea. It gets flooded to a 5 feet, approximately 5 feet of height. And after that, we will look at the interior of the house. Now, previously we were talking about the environmental influences of that region. Now we are talking about the traditional influences of the region. Now, what happens is that these guys, these Agaria families, they do not belong to this place actually. They have traveled here, but they must be having some residence, their permanent residence somewhere, right? They come from Kharagoda. It's a nearby place which is around 30 to 40 kilometers from their salt cultivation area. They travel there from Kharagoda. They carry all the belongings with them and they set up the tent at that makeshift house there. Now, along with their belongings, they also carried their traditions. They set up the kitchen just like they have at Kharagoda. They used to mix dung of wild ass. So it's a animal that is prevalent in that area. It's famous for that animal. And they use the dung and the mud together, they mix it and they use it for flooring. The coating of the floor is made of that mixture. And using the same thing, they also make the chulha of that kitchen and they cook food. And as you can see, there is no green vegetables around. They rely mostly on the things that stays for long. For example, rajma, maize, all the kind of pulses. Next, coming to the point where they cultivate the salt in the salt pans. Now these salt pans are huge pond-like structure, barely 5 centimeters of water in that. And below that water is a bed of salt which starts crystallizing. We'll explain this process in the future slides. Okay. So as I said, they start their process of cultivating salt from the month of September after the monsoon is gone, and they cultivate it till somewhere around April. By April, the crystals are ready to be sold, and they sell it to the brokers for further processing. All right, so where is Little Run of Kutch? If you see the satellite image, we see that it is somewhere near that Gulf. And that region, if you see here, it's pointed in the map. So it's around 5 hours journey from Ahmedabad to Virangam, and from Patadi, and then Karagoda, and then Little Run of Kutch. That means the nearest place that is accessible for these guys is the Karagoda village. And all the amenities, all the facilities like hospitals and NGOs, offices, education schools, schools, and all these kind of facilities are prevalent here, not in the Little Run of Kutch. And there are few villages towards the upper side also, towards the northern side of Little Run of Kutch, but they are not being marked here in the map. These people, whenever there is a problem, they run to their nearest villages like this, these directions. Okay. Now let's see. If we zoom in into the Little Run of Kutch, this is what you see. This land area is around 23,000 acres. 23,000 acres, which is around 3,000 square kilometer, with one residence staying roughly in 1 square kilometer. That means one family, if you see the other family, it will be somewhere in the horizon. So they have the luxury of land. Okay, that's a point that I want to establish right now, because we are coming back to that. Now, out of this, the number of Agaria families, they are around 5,000 is being estimated. And many of them are unregistered. Few of them are registered under the Panchayat of Karagoda. Around 25% they are saying that there are people who are working, but we do not know who are they. So they are still unregistered and unknown. You can see in the map the radius, and you can imagine the kind of distance they have between families. You might be imagining that these white boxes are the rooftops of their residences, but you are wrong. So these are actually the salt pans, and the residence is not even visible here. It's a zoomed in view. So this is a small hut if you see. So these big boxes, what you see from the top, are nothing but the salt pans, and there are multiple salt pans, and this is a very natural way of processing salt. What they do, they extract the underground water, which has a TDS value of more than 1200, the salty water. They pour it in one pond, and then they let the water flow from one pond to the other. It's a natural cascading process, like a stream. And then when all the heavy metals and all the chemicals get deposited, the filtered water, it travels to the final salt pan. And that salt pan is the salt pan from where the final crystals will be collected from. The Agarias, they first dig the bore wells, and under the bore wells, they do not extract water directly. They have a bed inside that bore well. And in the bed, they put a motor, electric pump, and then they do a digging from there and extract the water from that pump like that. If something goes wrong, they go down, they stand on the bed of that well, tube well. They can, mend the motor, they repair the motor then there itself, and then come back. So this is how the operation happens. Once the water is extracted, they go to these collection ponds. And from the collection ponds, it goes straight to the final salt pan, like that. So this family have 3 salt pans. That means they are going to make a ton of salt from these salt pans. So how does it happen now? As I said, first of all, when the season starts in the month of September, they start occupying their spaces, their old spaces. Now, as I said, they have a legacy of this. That means last year also they have cultivated salt. That means they already have a tube well ready somewhere in the middle of Run of Kutch, right? They just need to discover it. They go to the place first of all, and using their fine sense of judgment of the place, because they are familiar to it, even though there are no roads, they are trained to discover their old places because of their long time of staying in that area. And that's how they find their old place. They start settling down, they start making the huts, and then further digging. Whatever tube well was filled, they start digging them again and then start extracting the water. After 2-3 days of settlement, the entire family shifts with them and they start their daily life. After collecting that brine is nothing but it's a mixture of salt and water. And the brine is put in the collection pond where the crystallization first happens slowly and slowly. And they use a small shrub called gypta. It's a local name for a plant. And this gypta has many branches and there are no leaves, because of which the salt gets stuck to the branches and then it starts crystallizing like that. There are small chunks that happen and then they deposits there naturally. You can see in the third image, this is my hand holding the crystals. And during this process, during November and March, they have to break these crystals because they naturally tend to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And bigger crystal does not get sold in the market. They have to reduce it to around 1 inch square. So that's how they have to keep it breaking all the time and bringing it on the top of the salt pan. Now what's there in the surrounding? Let's see. Surrounding as in when you come to this kind of a problem, when you're solving for a community, the most important point that is that you should keep in mind is the ecosystem around it. When I say ecosystem, it means all those enablers, all those NGOs who are somewhere making a difference for this community. So when you go to this community, you see many people are very wholeheartedly, they are coming up and they have started doing something, making an impact for this society and all. Similarly, we also started looking for these kind of people because our wavelengths match, and you never know when something clicks, right? So we went on and we saw first of all what's there for these people. Number one is the portable water supply. The salt is, again I'm bringing this point, the salt is 1200 plus TDS, which is not edible. You cannot use it anywhere. Even if you use it in your hand, the salt deposits that leaves behind, they make your hand stiff. And there are some anecdotes coming from that community where they are saying that even after burning, after cremation of a body, their legs doesn't burn because they're affected by the salt. And many of these salt workers, because of the sharp edges of the crystals where they walk, they start having small bruises and all in their feet. And imagine stepping on a salt pan with bruises, the kind of pain you will feel. That's how this pain was realized by an NGO who worked actively on that area. They provided boots for these salt workers, saying that you can wear the boots and cultivate the salt. But the problem again is they were not designers, they couldn't empathize the situation, which is why the boots failed. Why? Because these agarias are well versed, they're well accustomed having bare feet, working bare feet in the salt pans. Wearing boots, they're not comfortable at all because of the sweat, because of all this kind of uncomfortable situations. So they never used boots. Only few of them in the very starting, because of the enthusiasm, because of the excitement, they used it, but it didn't work. Similarly, the same NGO also provided gloves. Again, the gloves are lying down dormant without being used because of this reason. What is this reason? So the constant fear that we had was, even if you're solving for these people, if we provide a solution, will it work? Are we going in the part of that NGO who provided boots and gloves? Are we going to fail like that? So that was the constant fear that we had. But the only thing that will again matter is how well we understand our users. So what we saw is these trucks that take the water, who brings water, edible water from Kharagoda, from the RO plant, and then they provide these agaria families with tank. And what is the amount of water one agaria gets is 20 liter per person per day. And there is a standard in the National Building Code where each person should be having 135 liters per day. which means 20 liters is nothing, and it is that water should be used for your flush, for your bath, for your kitchen, cooking, drinking, everything. 20 liters, imagine. This 20 liters of water has done one good thing, and that is these people in Kharagora, in Little Run of Kutch, have learned to use less water, and they have accustomed themselves in such an environment with that amount of water only.